Okay, so our recording has started. Please do raise your hand if you have questions. I really want to make sure that you're all learning and your questions are being answered. So please don't be afraid to either put questions in the chat or Discord even, or and even after class as well, especially for our people who are watching online. If you need to ask questions, please do still reach out and contact me or one of the TAs. We're here to help. So we're going to be using Replit as always. And I wanted to start off, so I had the assignment from last time, but I did want to go ahead and start off with, let's see. Okay, so last time I kind of fumbled a bit because I had my brain broke while I was working out this alphabetical sorting program. So I wrote it up for all of you to see. I will take a screenshot of this and put it in the slides if you're curious for it. I don't want to take too much time going over it, but basically what we needed to do was these nested if statements. So if string 1 is less than string 2 first in the alphabet, and it's less than string 3, we're going to print string 1, and then we're going to compare string 2 and 3. If string 2 is less, then print string 2, then string 3, or that means if that's false, then that means string 3 comes before string 2, so we're going to print that. And then you're just going to repeat this for all the permutations of that. So if string 2 should come first, or if string 3 should come first. So in this case, I made string 1 apple, string 2 cat, and string 3 banana, and it prints apple, banana, cat, just like I want. So I will be taking a screenshot of this and putting it in these slides over here. So if you want, you can take a look at that. And if you still have questions on it, feel free to reach out as always. So now for this other, let me go back. So now for this other assignment that we had way back on Tuesday, let me go to my Replit. Okay, so for this other assignment that we had on Tuesday, it was write a program that calculates the total price for someone buying movie tickets. If movie tickets are $11 each, ask the user to enter the number of movie tickets they would like to buy and then print out the total price. And then there's an extra part that I'll also go over. So hopefully you all had a chance to work on this, and if you didn't, it's okay. If you have trouble, please do remember that you can go to ChatGPT and ask it to help you write this code. It's a really great tool. I do suggest you understand how it's writing the code, and a lot of the times it will print out an explanation of it, but it's a really good tool if you're just stuck and you're like, I don't even know where to begin. So let's go ahead and start. So calculate the price for someone buying movie tickets. So first of all, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, what variables do I need to create? Well, I'm seeing tickets are $11 each. That looks like a variable to me. So I'm going to make a variable called ticket price, and I'm going to set that equal to $11, or just 11, the number 11. And we're going to know that that unit there is dollars. And now I'm going to want to find out how many tickets someone wants. Now on Tuesday, we covered the input function, and how we use this is we have a variable. So I'm going to call my variable num tickets equals, and now I'm going to say input. So we always have variable equals input, and that will let us use a user's input. And in this case, the prompt that I want to give that user is, how many tickets would you like to buy? I'm going to put a space there so that it's spaced out when I enter it. And now I have this num tickets. So what is wrong if I have here, I'm going to say total price equals, so we're going to say ticket price times the number of tickets that we get from the user. But what is wrong with this right here? What's wrong with this line? So someone put in the chat or raise your hand, what is wrong with this line right here? If I were just to run this as is, I say input, how many tickets would you like to buy? And then I say total price equals ticket price times number of tickets. This will give me an error. Why? Yes, exactly. Thank you. Number of tickets is a string. It's not an integer. So if we want to be able to use this here and do math on it, we need to convert it. We need to do typecasting. So I'm going to convert it to an integer, int num tickets. So if you did it up here, that's totally fine. If you did like int and then you close the parentheses on the other side, that's one way to do it. But you can also do it right here in our little equation. Total price equals ticket price times int num tickets. And now we want to print the total price. So I'm going to print your total price is, and then I can do a comma and then string total price. So if we run this, so it says, how many tickets would I like to buy? It's going to wait for me to enter it. So I'm going to say 3 tickets. It says my total price is 33. Of course, I could make that a little bit better. I could say, so let's say I could do your total price is plus, is plus string total price. So you can use this addition here to concatenate the strings, as long as your total price is a string. And then I can say dollars or something like that. And I'm going to put a space there. So, yep, thank you. So people are putting what they did, and that's awesome. So now if I run this again and it says, how many tickets would I like to buy? I'm going to enter that over here. Say 3. Total price is $33. Awesome. So now this other part was if the theater has a discount for bulk ticket orders, where if a customer orders more than 20 tickets, each ticket only costs $7. So if we incorporate that into here, we can use an if statement. So let's say the price will change if they order, let's see, was it more, it was 20 or more tickets. So I can say if int num tickets is greater than or equal to 20, then ticket price equals 7. And so this is going to change the value of ticket price here. So we can say ticket price equals 7. So that might be a little confusing. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it discount ticket price, so we're not overriding our variables. And yes, so someone pointed out something great. I love it. I'm so glad you caught that. So I can just do int right up here to automatically change that into an integer when I get it. Just by basically you're just doing input and then an int call on that input. And then I don't have to keep putting int all over the place. So thank you. Yes, that is a very good suggestion. So I could say if number of tickets greater than or equal to 20, discount ticket price equals 7, and then total price equals ticket price or discount ticket price times num tickets. And I am just hearing my clicky click keyboard. So if you can hear that, I apologize. And then we can have this else statement. So if that else, colon, don't forget your colons, and then also don't forget to indent. So if the number of tickets is greater than 20, then we have this discount. Else, we just use this ticket price up here. So now if I want to run this, it says how many tickets would we like to buy? Let's test it by just doing 1 ticket. Total price is $11. Perfect. Now if I run this, I say how many tickets would you like to buy? And I want to do 20. Then we want to make sure it's going to be 20 times 7, which is 140. So perfect. So does anyone have questions on this assignment before I move on to our new stuff with loops? I'm going to take a sip of my water. All right, I'm getting some thumbs up. Thank you for that feedback. And it looks like we're good to keep going. So I'm really excited. I wanted to put this in here. If you'd like to have some extra practice, especially since we're going to get into some more complicated or more advanced Python stuff later this summer. If you want extra practice, you can do it. You can click on this link here. It'll take you to free Bootcamp's Scientific Computing with Python course. I love this website. It's very useful. They have several different languages on there. And they have a video on while loops and a video on for loops that I think are very nice. So if you want some extra stuff, check that out. But let's go ahead and get into it. So what even are loops? Well, these are sections of code that repeat, and it can repeat a specific number of times or an indefinite number of times. We can kind of set that, and I'll show you how to do that. But they're called loops because they loop over a chunk of code. And so this is really useful when we're doing things like with that, the prompt, when we were trying to see if a number is divisible by 4, and we kind of just had to go through all of the numbers under 10. That's really useful for loops because we can just ask it to repeat until it gets to a number that's greater than 10. So we'll try that out and see how it works. So why do we need them? As I said before, we want to try avoiding repetitive code. So typing the same commands over and over. So if I wanted to print the numbers 1 through 5, I definitely could have 5 print statements that say print 1, print 2, print 3. But it's a lot easier if we just put that in a loop and we say, okay, while some condition, print these numbers, and it'll just go through and print. So, and another reason that it's really useful is you can tell a computer to do a task a certain number of times as well. So like print statements, or maybe we want different user input and we want to get several things that are input, we can have that code run more than once, and it will do that for us. So there are 2 types of loops in Python. Python has a while loop and a for loop. First, we're going to learn the while loop. This is a loop based on a condition, so true or false, kind of like our if statements. So it is going to run the loop while a condition is true. So you see it's got that while word in its definition. So this is going to loop for an indefinite number of times. You don't know, you're not going to say do this 3 times. You're going to say do this while this condition is true. So you don't know exactly when that condition might change. And we will look at that in more detail. A for loop is a little bit different. It loops based on iteration. So this means it's going to loop a very specific number of times. So you will say something like, for all of the numbers in range 1 through 10, do this task, and it will do that 10 times. So it loops for a very specific number of times. So while loops are great if you don't know how many times you want it to repeat, you kind of just want it to repeat until something happens. For loops are great when you know exactly how many times you want it to repeat, and you want it to repeat only that number of times. So let's go ahead and talk about while loops. This is usually where programming classes start. This is the first loop that I learned. So this will evaluate a condition, kind of like our if statement, where we say if condition. The while loop says while condition, run this code. So it evaluates the condition and then runs that code that's indented inside the while statement or the loop. Once it reaches the end of that code, it's going to evaluate the condition again. If it's true, it runs the code again. If it's false, then it exits the loop and continues on with your code. So words don't really make a whole lot of sense when you're trying to think about code sometimes. So I have this visual example for you. So let's say we have this while loop, and we're going to start the while loop. It evaluates a condition. So let's say we just have something true or false. We set something to true or false. So while A equals true, evaluate this condition. If A is equal to true, then we run the statements that we put inside of our loop. We finish all of those, and then we go back to the start of the loop. It's going to evaluate that condition again. If it's still true, statements happen, and then it'll go on doing this until that condition becomes false. And then once that condition is false, the loop has ended, and it just continues on down the Python file as we've seen before. So here's an example in code of what a while loop looks like. And it has specific syntax like all of our code does. So we have while, and then a condition. It doesn't have to be in parentheses, and then colon. Notice that colon again, always popping up on us. So just like with our if statements, we have if condition colon, you're going to have while condition colon. Yes, Giuseppe, do you have a question?
I have done this code before.
Amazing. That's really awesome. I'm so
I meant
glad.
the one on the top, the main, def main part.
Oh yeah. Yes.
I did while
throw
loops in
that
my
in.
coding class.
That's really awesome. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome.
Great. I love to hear what you guys have done before. So while loops are very common. And this def main here is just me defining my main function. We have not talked about that yet. I do like to throw in varied examples for you so that you see a bunch of different types of code. So we'll talk about what line 1 and line 8 here mean at the end, towards the end of the summer. But for now, you can just look inside here. I have my num set to 0. And now I say while my num is less than 5, colon, and now everything indented is inside of this while loop. So it'll repeat that while my num is less than 5. So I'm going to print my num, and now I'm going to reassign. I'm going to say now my num is equal to my num plus 1. So my num starts at 0. It's going to go through this loop. At this line here, my num is now set to 0 plus 1, which is 1. It's going to evaluate this condition. It says, is my num less than 5? Yes, it's equal to 1 now, so that's less than 5. It will print 1, and it'll go through until we increment it enough to where it's equal to 5, and then it will stop. So if we look at that in Replit, let's do, okay, so I'm going to say my num equals 0. Now, while my num is less than 5, colon, enter, and it automatically indents for me. I'm going to say print my num, and now I'm going to say my num equals my num plus 1. So this is allowing us, I know it looks a little strange because we're actually just resetting this value. So it's going to say the new value of my num is equal to the current value plus 1. So right now it's 0, it's going to be 1, it's going to go through again. And so it's going to evaluate this condition every time. And then I'm going to have another print statement just so we can see what happens after it gets out of the loop. But now I'm going to, so when it finishes this loop, I'm going to have it print loop is done. All right, so let's see what happens here. There we go. And it goes really fast. So we have it printed 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So all of the values that we went through here when we added to my num, then it finally got to 5 at the bottom here when it was equal to 4. So my num equals 4 plus 1, that's 5. Goes back up to this line. It evaluates this condition, turns out to be false. So it says, oh, well, condition is false. We're not going to do that loop. And then we get down to loop is done. So that's our while loop. Very, very useful. One important thing that I want you to notice about this is that the condition inside of your loop needs to change in order for your loop to end. Otherwise, you're going to have what's called an infinite loop, where your code just keeps looping and looping and looping and looping, and it never stops. And that is scary sometimes. So we have over here, if I just have my num equals 0, while my num is less than 5, print my num. We never update my num. We just tell it while it's less than 5, print it. Well, it's equal to 0. Nothing's happening to it. There's no calculations. It's just going to go and go and go and go. So this might happen to you as you're learning, and still happens to me sometimes. So yeah, this will never end. But luckily, oh, okay, that's not what I thought it was going to be. There is a way to get out of it. You can hit Control-C on your keyboard, and then that will stop your code. I think Replit also has a button for stopping it, but it's very important to remember that you need to change this condition up here, or else your loop is just going to keep going and going. So that's why I have this increment here where I say it's equal to itself plus 1 each time. So we change that value. And here's the little tip I was looking for. If you run code and it won't stop, just press Control-C and the program should end. So here are some examples for you. Before you look over these examples, what questions do you have for me so far? I'm going to check the chat really quick. All right. Okay, doesn't look like we have any questions in chat. If you do have a question, please do let me know. Oh, wait, just a second. just enough for me to drink some water. Okie doke. So let's look at some examples. So we have this code here, and like I said, this def main and main is just sometimes put into Python files. We haven't gone over that yet, so you can just kind of look and pretend like this is our file here. So we have x equals 10, while x is greater than 0, print x, and then x now equals x minus 1. So you can kind of imagine what I'm wanting it to do here. X starts at 10. I want it to print x through each iteration and then decrement x by 1 each time and then print blast off at the very end. So what does this code do? Someone tell me in chat, what is this code going to do? Yeah, so some people are already answering this question I have here. Good job, you're jumping ahead. So yeah, the code is supposed to do a countdown if we don't change anything. It's going to count down 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then blast off kind of like a rocket. But if I replace this with x equals x plus 1, then x will always be greater than 0, and it will just keep going and going and going, and x will get bigger and bigger and bigger. So let's see what this one looks like in action. So we have, let's say my num equals 10, while, okay, let's just actually, okay, x equals 10. While, and feel free to type along with me if you would like to, or watch the video later and type along with me then. While x is greater than 0, colon, print x, and now x is equal to x minus 1. And then at the end, I want to print blast off. Okay, let's see what happens here. So it happens really fast. So 10, 9, 8, 7, 8. So it goes down to 1 and then blast off. Perfect. That's exactly what I wanted. But if we take this and we have it x equals x plus 1. Whoa. Oh my goodness. That's insane. So in Replit, we can hit the stop button. If you're, it'll try to stop it. Sometimes it takes a while. Look at it go. So you can see how chaotic this is.
That's a lot of numbers.
Yeah, it's a lot. So it finally stopped. It finally was able to stop itself. It went, pressed on the brakes. But yeah, so X just kept going up and up and up. So I hope that helps you remember, pay attention to this condition you put up here and make sure that the variable you're changing will actually make your condition be false eventually. Because if this just keeps evaluating to true, then that will give you problems. It'll just keep going and going. So I like that example there. Okay, and then another one that I have. So in this one, I am asking the user to guess a number, and I want them to keep guessing until they input the correct number. So in this case, I have secret number equals 7. Oops. And I say guess equals input, guess a number. And now I say while their guess does not equal, remember exclamation mark means not, while guess does not equal the secret number, print, that's not the right number. And then we need to update guess, right? Because it's in our condition here, we need to update it and say guess equals input guess again. Then finally, when this evaluates to false, which means that they did guess the correct number, we're going to print correct. The number is blank. And so this question that I have on here is, why did I assign secret number to be a string? Quick little question to make sure you're understanding. Why did I assign secret number out here to be a string? Yes, input gives me a string. Yes, input gives me a string. So I want to make sure that I am comparing two strings. So while these strings are not equal, print, that's not the right number. So let's try out this one too. I like this one. And we'll have an assignment that's pretty similar. Okay, so I'm going to say secret number equals 7. And then guess So I need to set up the guess because I can't have my while loop while guess does not equal something. I can't have that yet because I don't even have a variable named guess yet. If I try to do that without starting up guess, it's going to give me an error. So we need to make sure we have guess here. So guess equals input, enter the secret number. Now I can do my while loop. I can say while guess does not equal the secret number, colon, tab, print, incorrect, guess again. Oh, I'm just gonna say incorrect. And then we need to update guess, because if I update it outside of the loop, that's not going to work. Notice this indentation here? We'll never update guess inside the loop, so it will just keep on going. So if I want to update guess, I need to make sure that's indented. Guess equals input. Enter the secret number. And then at the end, when it breaks out and they do guess the secret number, I'm going to print correct. So let's go over to here and clear this. All right, clear that. Okay. So now if I run this, it says enter the secret number, say 10, enter incorrect, 0, incorrect, 23, incorrect, incorrect. And if I say 7, correct. Woohoo! So notice this will, with this comparison space or something, it will also not be correct. Not space there, sorry. So if we run this again and I put 7 space, still going to be incorrect. If I put space 7, also incorrect. So I think my internet is being weird, so I hope I didn't just, I hope you can still hear me. Okay. Awesome. So I'm going to go through some of these examples and we're at our task. Okay, so let's do this one. Now this one. So I'm gonna make it bigger. So now let's look at this one. So what does this code do? Go ahead and read through it. And if you need extra help figuring out what it does, just put it in, copy paste it, or I guess you can't because it's an image, but put it into your own Replit. But look at this code and then put in the chat, what does this code do? We have this instructions variable. We have a while loop here. Just read through this line by line and think, how would Python interpret this? So what does this code do? Yeah, there are 2 users named Miranda Shirk because I was having some computer issues. Okay, so does anyone have any guesses for what this code does here? Go ahead, you can either raise your hand or you can type it. Yeah, thank you. So it's going to give instructions if I type Y. So if I take this here and put it into Replit, so what it's going to do is raise your hand if you would like to talk. Those are just the instructions. Repeat equals input. Would you like to read the instructions again? Yes or no, Y/N. And then we're going to get that input from the user. So if they put Y, then that means that it wants to repeat again. So what we're checking for is if this repeat variable equals Y. And if it does, it's going to print the instructions. And so it'll just print these instructions as long as the user keeps entering Y, because we ask for input again. So now we have this question here. What happens if the user types W? So if they've been typing Y, they've been typing Y, what happens if they type W? We've got some conflicting answers in our chat here, and I love it. I love conflicting answers because that means we can talk about something. So if the user types W, let's just see what happens. All right, so I didn't copy this over, so okay. Instructions equals, I'm going to say, I just made up some instructions, and then repeat equals input. Would you like to hear the instructions again? Yes or no? And I have this backslash in just to make a new line. Now, while repeat equal Y, print the instructions. And then we need to get that input variable again. So I'm just going to copy and paste it right here. And then let's see. Thank you for listening to the instructions. I think that's all our code has here. Okay. So if we type W, let's just try it out. Oops. Okay. I'm going to clear this output here. So let's just see. I'm going to run it. Would you like to hear the instructions again? Oh, I never printed the instructions. Print the instructions. Okay. Here are the instructions. Don't yell. Would you like to hear the instructions again? Yes or no? So I'm going to hit Y. And it's going to say while repeat equals Y, print the instructions again, and then ask again if I want to hear the instructions. Y. And I hit W. All right. Think about it. Think about what you think is going to happen. It exits the loop. No error. So the reason there's no error is all we're checking for is if the input is equal to Y. Even though in these instructions I said you can type Y or N, the instructions, whatever I put here doesn't matter. Python's not looking at that. We read that. This is just a message to the user. The only condition Python is looking for is if that string is equal to Y. And then when that string is not equal to Y, it's not an error. It's just going to stop this loop here, break out of the loop, and then print this. So this condition evaluating to false is not bad. It's not bad at all. It's not going to give us an error. It just says, oh, now the loop is over. I'm going to skip all of the lines that are inside the loop and then go to this next one. So that would work for if I typed anything except for Y. So let's try it again. So Y. And now if I say yes, it ends because that's not equal to Y, which is the condition that we set here. Yeah, so I love that. That was some great discussion on what we think is going to happen. Let me see. I think that is the last example that I have for while loops. So let's see. I think according to my clock, we have 20 minutes left. So let's see. I'm going to take a vote in chat. If you would like to spend the rest of the time working on this task, either by yourself or in a group, then say task. Or if you would like to continue on and learn about for loops for the rest of the 20 minutes, and then do the for loops and the while loops task, then say continue. So if you want to continue learning today, then say continue. If you want to stop and work on, where did the task go? If you want to stop and work on the task, then say task. All right, we've got 2 votes for continue. Does anyone want to stop and work on the task? We've got to continue, please. So polite. Okay, looks like we are heavily skewed towards continue. Okay, so if you would rather work on the task, then feel free to stop here, work on it, and then watch the rest of this recording. But it looks like most people want to go ahead and learn about for loops, and then you'll have these 2 tasks to do before Tuesday, and we'll go over them as well. So if you need more time, that's totally fine. Okay, so this is a while loop task. So just to review real quick, because we just went over this, we're going to continue. So while loops execute a set of statements as long as a condition is true. It's going to evaluate that condition first, and then it's going to run the code. When it reaches the end of the loop, it's going to go right back up and evaluate that condition. And then when that condition is false, the loop stops, it ends, continues with the rest of the code. For loops are based on iteration. These repeat a specific number of times. So I saw that someone in the chat asked about, what if we ask them, what if we ask the user to guess a specific number of times? This is when we can use for loops. So this will iterate over what I'm going to call an item. And that item can be a range of numbers. So it can iterate over the numbers 1 through 10. It can iterate over letters in a string. It can iterate over items in a list. Now, we haven't talked about list yet, but if you're interested, you can click on that link. I hope that link still works. You can click on that link if you really need to know what lists are. We will get to that in a couple of weeks though. And so this will execute that code chunk, the indented code inside of the loop. It will execute that once for each item. So if you tell it to iterate over numbers 1 through 10, it will iterate for number 1, iterate 2, iterate 3, iterate 4, until it gets to 10. It's basically keeping count of how many times it does something. So it can do that with numbers. It can also do that with letters, which is weird to think about. But if you say print for each letter in this word, so let's say the word cat, for each letter in the word cat, I want you to print that letter. So it'll start on C, it'll print C, and it'll go to A, and print A, then it'll go to T and print T. And when it gets to the end of that, it will stop. So just like with while loops, here's a visual example of for loops. So we have, I think I made this diagram. I could be wrong. I think I got one for the while loop and I found that online, and then I looked for a for loop diagram. They didn't have one. So I think I made this. I could be wrong. So don't anyone credit me with this, but that's an okay chart if I did make it. So anyway, the loop will start and it will say this element in the collection. So like, is this item in the collection? And if yes, it will run the code. And then it'll go back to the start. It'll see if it has another element in collection. So like if we're iterating over the numbers 1 through 5, it'll say it'll start on 1. Is 1 in this? Yes. It's going to run the code. Is 2 in this? Yes. Run the code. Is 3 in this? Yes. Run the code until it gets to something outside of its collection that it's looking at, where it says no, and it stops. So for loops are a bit different to think about, a bit different than while loops, because we're not evaluating a condition. We're looking at items in a collection, usually a list of numbers. So the structure of this is for item. So I italicize this because this will usually be a variable or something in collection. So that for keyword lets Python know that you're starting a for loop. Item is the iterator variable, and it can have any name. Most often it's named I. So you'll say for I in. In is the keyword in Python typically used in for loops to define the collection we're looking over. And then the collection is the set of items that you want to iterate over. So kind of some abstract words here. Usually when we are doing for loops, we'll use this range function, which you'll see soon. And so this range function just lets you set a starting number and then an ending number. So you have starting number, comma, ending number. It's important to note that the starting point is inclusive, which means it includes the starting number. The ending number is exclusive, which is it ends before it gets to that number. So if we say range 0, 5, it includes 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4. It does not include 5. This makes some people angry. It's okay. That's just Python. And it's separated by commas. So I'm going to show you, and then there's an optional add-on where if you have a third number in here, it'll count by that number. So if you want to count by 2, you can put comma 2 as your third argument. But let's look at this. Let's see what the syntax of this is. What does the code actually look like? So for this, I have for I in range 0, 5. So this is for the numbers inside the range 0 to 5, not including 5, print I. So let's just see what this does. So I'm going to say for I in range 0, 5. So this is usually how you'll see for loops, is with this for I in range. It's usually how you'll see it, especially towards the beginning. This is our starting number 0. This is our ending number. It will end before it gets to this number. Once it gets to that number, it's going to stop the loop. So I'm going to say print I. All right, so if we run this, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So you see what it did here. We told it for each number, we're just going to call the number I. For each number I in range 0 to 5, print I. This, we call it an iterator. It can be whatever you want it to be. You can name it whatever you want, as long as it's not already the name of another variable. So we could call this, for number in range 0 to 5, print number. So it doesn't have to be I, but we usually name it I because it's quick to type. And we know that it's a placeholder and we're not going to use it much. You could say for J in range 0 to 5, print J. So the name of that variable there doesn't really matter much. Okay, so I know that this is all new. So I'm going to stop and check. Does anyone have questions on this? Questions on for loops? Was there anything that I didn't quite explain very well, or that kind of still confuses you?
No questions.
Awesome.
Miranda, is there a global
Yes.
variable cheat sheet of some type somewhere on the internet?
So in one of my slides, I did link that. I would have to look back and see where I did link it, of just like common keywords. Is that what you're asking about? Like common keywords in Python that you can't name your variables?
Like, yeah, the semantics for global variables, but basically things that are already pre-assigned. That way, when you're trying to write your own stuff, you don't find out the hard way that, oh, it's already hard code. What you're trying to independently name is already hard coded.
Yes, I did have a list on one of my PowerPoints. I'll have to go back and see.
Oh, okay. If it's already in something else, I'll go through and look for it. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, I just don't,
to, like,
I think it might have been
built-in
the
function?
first or second.
Is Raymond referring to built-in functions in Python?
No, I'm referring to pre-assigned variables where Python or its packages are hard-coded to have certain variables predefined. Sometimes it could be like a multi-character name. Sometimes it could be as simple as like a single letter of the alphabet, just depending on
The only thing I know about this is that if you define a variable without stating a value, then there is a default value assigned to that. So if you say well, I'm actually not sure if it's possible in Python since you don't define the types when defining variables. That means inserting the value. But in other
Yeah, Python just gives an error for that.
Yeah.
But in
So
other
I think-
languages where you define the variable type, as well as the value. If you define a variable without that value and just the type, then it will be read with the default value for
Oh,
any
no, what I'm
row
referring
zero.
to is, so I don't like cut into too much time. For one of the certifications I'm working on, the instructions say don't use global variables. Those are ones that have already been assigned, like say within Python or one of the packages you pull. Like, certain variable names are.
Oh, okay. I see what you're saying. So that's not, global variables are something that you define. So
No,
Python,
global variables are predefined, and then custom variables are the ones you make yourself.
yeah,
So
so
for
but I can
example-
make a global variable. So global
Yeah,
variable equals hello. So you're never going to come across, I say never, watch it happen. That doesn't really exist in Python. You assign those. So that's why they tell you
Yeah.
not to use them, because they get confusing. What I thought you were talking about is like if you try to name a variable in equals hello, that will give you problems when you try to say for I in range, because now you're
Yeah.
using the in keyword.
that was something that was related to this, and I kind of wasn't sure. I knew I was confused, but I didn't know in which direction.
Yeah,
No, if that
it's a
makes
good
sense.
question. Yeah,
Yeah,
but with
because-
global variables specifically,
Okay.
that's something that you do. It's very rare to run across that in
Okay,
just basic
yeah.
Python.
I have some coding assignments where that's how the instruction is written without context. So you have like you have starter code, and then you'll have a section where you're supposed to basically finish the code block and then check
Yeah.
if it runs. That's where I was kind of having a chicken and egg kind of thing going on. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, no problem, no problem. We won't have that in this class at all, so no issues.
Curse vague instructions for programming assignments.
Yeah, really. We like very specific instructions. Okay, so now if we just looking at the range function a bit more before we end for loops. So you can also ask range to count by negative numbers. So let me show you, range can do some pretty cool things. So we can say for I in range. Well, let me actually show you this. Okay, so if I'm going to say for I in range 0 to 5, I don't have to use this I variable. So we used it before where we said print I, but I can also just tell something, say print hello. And so that's not to do this until it counts as range here. So it's going to say hello, 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 hello. So it's not going to use I at all. So we can use this variable, but it's also just counting its place so that it knows how many times it's done something. So in this case, I have for image print hello, I can add something else. It's a print hi, and I can even do something else that's like, let's say I have another variable that I'm calling a equals 4, and then I can say a equals a plus 1. And it's just going to do that. So even though I didn't do anything with this, at the end of this, I could print a or something, and it'll still have that value. But what I'm trying to show is that we don't have to use this I variable. It's just a way for Python to keep track of how many times it has done something. So, well, it'll make more sense with practice. So I hope you can kind of think about it and then develop some questions to ask so that we can practice it. But if we, let's say for I in range 0, 10, let's keep printing I because I think it's useful to see the number that Python is on. So if we say for I in range 0, 10, print I, what if I just want to print even numbers? I can say, I can add another comma and a third number. And this last number here, this third number, is what it counts by. So by default, if you don't put anything here, you can think of it as by default, this number is 0. But if we wanted to count, or by default, this number is 1, not 0, 1. It increments by 1 each time. But if we wanted to count by 2s, we can add this comma and this last number here, and now it'll count by 2s. So if I wanted to start on 0, and then increment by 2 and print I each time, it'll go 0, 2, 4, 6, 8. Notice it won't do 10. That's just how the range function is built. It's when it gets to this number, it stops. That's just part of Python. But we can ask it to count by 2s. We can ask it to count by 3s. So 0, 3, 6, 9. We can even ask it to count by negative numbers. So if you want to do negative numbers, though, you need to make sure you start with a higher number, say 10, 0, -1. Now it will count backwards. So some interesting things you can do with the range function. And then I mentioned before, we can also iterate over strings instead of a list of numbers, and your iterator doesn't even need to be named I. So in this example, I have it iterating over I in name, or in this case, I called it letter in name. So let's say name equals Miranda for I in name. This only works with strings. If you say for I in your string, it's going to go over each character in that string. Then you can say print I, and now this on each line will print every letter in the variable name until it gets to the end, and then it will stop. So run that, Miranda. There we go. So like I said, if you want it to be more readable, you can say for letter in name. It doesn't matter what you name this up here. Print letter, and it will still do that. Okay, so we ran through that fast, but you guys said you wanted to continue. We will review this next week. Oops. My slides got away from me. Okay, we will review this next week. So if you're still confused, you have some time to think about it and then ask questions next week as well. But I also have this task 2, where I want you to use a for loop to print the positive numbers less than 25 that are divisible by 3. Okay, so that's all I have for you today. Go ahead and work on task 1 and task 2. So let me see, that's slide 37 and slide 20. Slides here. Go ahead and work on those, and I will see you all on Tuesday. Do email me, send me your code if you want me to look over it. I've loved looking over all of y'all's code and seeing that you are grasping these concepts. And I would love to look over it even if you're not grasping the concepts, especially so that I can kind of help you through that. And our TAs are always on Discord as well. So go ahead and get to work on these, and then I'll see you Tuesday where we will discuss the answers. So goodbye, everyone. I can't stick around for questions today because I have to go, but please do reach out to one of our TAs on Discord or maybe email.
Bye.
Have a weekend.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.